of water. Good to go? Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam, cheery beery beery bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom. Shabbat 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 shalom. Shabbat 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 shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat 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 Shabbat. Shalom. Welcome on this Shabbat evening. For all of you who are with us in person, I think everybody's got the book. For all who you are joining us online, virtually, we should have a link to the Sidur, Mishkan Tefillah, where you can follow us along in the virtual edition. So with that, we'll start with something that's not entirely in the book at all. This is a kind of adaptation of Psalm 96. Shir Ladonai. Shiru Ladonai. Oh,
sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru Ladonai. Oh, Haaretz. Shiru Ladonai. Sing unto God all the earth a new song. We will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru Ladonai. Oh, Haaretz. Shiru Ladonai.
Page 133, Psalm 98. Mizmor shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash ki niflaot asa, hoshia lo yemino, uzero azro kodsho, hodi Adonai yeshuato, lene hagoyim magilat tzidkato, zachar chasto, Nato levet Yisrael, Ra'u cholav se'aretz, et Yeshua Eloheinu, Yai lai lai ari Adonai kol haaretz pitzchu v'ranenu v'zameru zamru l'Adonai bechinor b'kol zimra b'chatzotzrot b'kol shofar hariu lifnei Melech Adonai Yiram hayam umelo tevel v'yoshveva yaelai narod yamchu chaf yachad harim yiranenu lifnei Adonai ki hiva lishbot haaretz yishbot tevel b'tzedek ve'amim v'mei shaharim yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yalla lai 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 yai lai lai yalla lai 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 yalla lai 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 yalla lai 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 yalla lai yalla lai yalla lai lai yalla lai lai yalla lai lai yalla lai yalla lai lai yalla lai yalla lai lai yalla lai lai ya lai 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 ya lai 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 ya lai 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 ya lai 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 lai. Page 137. Kol Adonai chotze lavot esh, Kol Adonai yachil midban. Adonai sits enthroned, sovereign forever. May Adonai grant strength to God's people and bestow on God's people well-being. Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Page 138. Lechadodi likrat kala yalala 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 le Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala yalala 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 le Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad ishmianu el hamiyuchad Adonai echad ushmo echad v'shemu tiferet v'litila lechadodi likat kala yalala 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 ne Shabbat nekabela lechadodi likat kala yalala 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 ne Shabbat nekabela. Mikdash melech imelucha kumitzei mitocha hafecha ravlach shavet be'emek habacha ve'hu yachamol alayich chemla lechadodi likrat kala yalala 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 ne Shabbat nekabela lechadodi likat kala yalala 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 ne Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri kiva ore kumni ori uri shir daveri kevod Adonai alayich nigla lechadodi likrat Kala Yalala 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 Nei Shabbat Nekabela Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala Yalala 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 Nei Shabbat Nekabela V'hayu shisa she'osai V'rachaku kol mavalai Yasis alayich Elohai Kimsos chata al kala Lecha dodi likrat kala Yalala 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 Nei Shabbat Nekabela Lecha dodi likrat kala Yalala 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 Nei Shabbat Nekabela Boi v'shalom ateret ba'ala Gam b'simcha u'b'tzola Tochemunei am segula Boi chala Lecha dodi likrat kala Yalala 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 Nei Shabbat Nekabela Lecha dodi likrat kala Yalala 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 Nei Shabbat Nekabela. Please be seated. Page 144. Yit Gedal v'Yit Gedash Shemei Rabba V'Yalmad Yivrach Yirtei V'Yamlich Malchutei B'chayechon Uv'yomechon Uv'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael Bagala Bagala Uv'Izman Kariv V'Yimru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Leolam Lo Me'almaya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitbar V'Yitroman V'Yitnaseh V'Yitadar V'Yitaleh V'Yitalal Shemei D'Kudsha B'Richu Leila Min Kol Birchata B'Shirata Tushbechata B'Nechemata Dami run bialma v'yemeru amen. We'll move ahead to page 264 and rise as able for Baruch. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamivorach. Baruch Adonai Hamivorach Hamivorach Leolam Va'ed Hamivorach Hamivorach Leolam Va'ed. Please be seated. Page 265. Adonai, your majesty is proclaimed by the marvels of earth and sky. Sun, moon, and stars testify to your power and your wisdom. Day follows day in endless succession, and the years vanish, but your sovereignty endures. Though all things pass, let not your glory depart from us. Help us to become co-workers with you and endow our fleeting days with abiding worth. Baruch atah Adonai, Amariv Aravi. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael, Anchavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochbeinu u'bekumeinu, nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'b'mitzvotecha, leolam va'ed. Ki hem mechayenu v'orech yameinu uvahem nega yomam v'layla yavat chalta sirmi menu la'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. 267. Shema, Shema Yisrael. I'll try, but I do a little better than that on key. Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad, Yai Lalai, Yai Lalai, Lalai Lalai, Yai Lai Lai Lai. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la la la. Yai la 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 la. Baruch Shem Kavod. Yai la 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 la, yai la la la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la la la, yai la 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 la. And you shall love with all of your heart, your soul, and with all of your might. You shall teach, and you shall teach your children to hope, to love, and to know what is right. Yai la 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 la, yai la la la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la la la, yai la 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 la. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavcha, v'chol nafshecha, u'v'chol me'odecha, v'hayu hadavarim ha'ele, asher anochi metzavecha, hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, uvlechtecha havaderech, Ushok becha uvkumecha, ukshartam laot al yadecha, v'hayu latotafot beinenecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. Leman tizkeru basitem et kol mitzvotai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem, Amen. Long ago, we escaped the tyranny of Egypt. Our people saw the power of the Most High. We learned God's presence redeems time and events, so we celebrate the power that makes for freedom. Moshe and Miriam uvnei Yisrael, lecha anu shira b'simcha rabah, b'amru chulam. Michamocha, the Song at the Sea, page 270.
Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh. No rahilot, oseh no rahilot, oseh Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Malchut tzefara uvanecha, Lokei hayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam, Ze'eliyanu ve'amaru, Ze'eliyanu ve'amaru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh. No rahilot, oseh no rahilot, oseh Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed.
See, we make that journey from bondage toward liberation, and sometimes along the way it's hard. Often along the way it's hard. So we also need strength, and we need to rest, to gather our strength to continue along on that challenging journey toward justice and liberation. Hashkivenu speaks of rest. We ask God to spread over us Sukkot Shalom, the shelter of peace, of rest, of wholeness, of integrity. Page 271.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter storms. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Leshalom. Behamidenu, Shomreinu Lechayim. Ufros Aleinu, Sukkot Shlomecha. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Leshalom. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Leshalom. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms.
Page 272. V'hishameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam berit olam beini uvein b'nei Yisrael Oti leolam leolam Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai Et hashamayim v'et haaretz Uvayom hashavi Shabbat Vainafash. We rise as able for tefillah, beginning page 273. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Bekonei Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot V'imahot, Umevi Goel Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshi U'Magim, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye metim atarav lehoshia, Meshiva ruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkel chaim bechesed, Mechaye metim berachamim rabim. Tzomech noflim berofech olim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Vishenei afar, Hamocha bal gevurot, Umidom elav, Melech memit umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'naman atah l'chayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hametim. You are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Continue with the rest of Tefillah on our own through page 282, the Hebrew or the English or your own prayers and meditations. When you are done, please feel free to be seated. B2.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Yetahu Melech Adon Lekol HaShalom. Yetahu Melech Adon Lekol HaShalom, Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Letov B'necha Levarech Et Amcha Yisrael V'kol v'kol sham Yishlomecha. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
So at this time, I'm going to, as usual, ask people to share things that they're grateful for. Sometimes big occasions in one's life cycle, sometimes small but significant things along the way. I was reminded by someone who listens online that they can't hear. So I'm going to repeat. You share, and I'm going to repeat it so the people who are watching virtually can see. Debbie. Okay, so Jesse and Stephanie, son and daughter-in-law, arriving for the holiday. Wow, Mazel Tov. So Ina's mother has a 96th birthday. Freddie. Okay, so Freddie and Chava back from a week with visiting family in Ginny and Julie. Was that okay? Nice. Brad. Okay, so Brad in Denver with his brother and family. Shelley. All right, Mazel Tov. So Shelley has finished a long, hard office renovation that you ended up de facto being in charge of. Sandy. Okay, so Jared Barrett, we're coming home from El Salvador for the Thanksgiving holiday. Others?
Sorry, there's some online.
Okay, yeah.
We have Jerry and Jayon say that thank you for the great Hanukkah bags. And
Nice.
And Petra says that all 6 of her children have had the first vaccine.
Wow. I was thinking, I think that must mean kids and grandkids. Unless Steve and Petra have 3 secret kids that we don't know about. Yes, Andrea. Okay. So grateful, Andrea, to have somebody else cooking for this year. Gail. Wow, grandson and girlfriend with us. Connor. So for that one, I'm going to have you come up here. Yeah, we had a trip to the hot springs in Idaho City, and Connor is the newest member of the Jewish people in our community. And so we welcome you into our community, our people, you who join with devotion and commitment. And so I'd like us as a community to celebrate the occasion, because your big celebration is also a celebration for all of us as you bring your strengths to our community. So I'd like everybody to join in singing Shehechianu. We give thanks. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. We praise you, Holy One, for giving us life, sustaining us, enabling us all to be here to celebrate Connor with you. Mazel Tov. So I invite now also We're going to do in a moment a prayer for healing of body, for healing of soul, for healing of spirit. Again, if you are online, you can type in names of folks who you are holding in your prayers for healing. If you're here, I invite you to speak aloud. Debbie. David Salzberg, Doug Spears, Doug Wolf, okay, for Chuck McKay. Over Rachel and Cordy and Kelsey. Over Rachel is also my daughter's name. Shira and Ivan, and for Dave House, Gail, Jessica Hughes, for Eileen and Elizabeth, yes. Tucson, Sam, and Ben. Luann Ellis, long time friend for Sylvia. And I'll add Rebecca Gettleman and for Max. Jack, we have folks online.
Yeah, Petra says for Dave and Clint and Dan and Kate.
So for these and for all who were holding in our prayers, Misha Berach, a prayer for healing, page 371.
Misha Berach, Avotenu, Mekor Abraham, Belimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach, Imotenu, Mekor Abraham, Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
So many are tempted to draw a parallel or an opposition between fear and faith. The notion being that if we have real faith, deep faith, then we won't be afraid. But a section of our Torah portion raises this question and leaves room for different answers and attitudes. So let me give you the scenario where we begin. For the last 20 years, as we open, Jacob has been on the run from his older brother Esau. The last time they saw one another, Jacob and their mother Rebekah had conspired to steal from Isaac a blessing that Isaac had intended to give to Esau. enraging Esau, who threatens to kill his slightly younger twin. So for 20 years, they have not seen one another. Each has prospered during that time. They now have herds and flocks and an entourage. And after 2 decades have passed, the fateful meeting is set. Jacob, the night before, knows that the next morning he will encounter his brother Esau. And in Genesis chapter 32, verse 8, the Torah says, Jacob feared and was greatly distressed. In his anxiety, he divided the people with him and the flocks and the herds and the cattle into 2 camps. Essentially prepared a military response. I'm going to divide my camp into 2 so that Esau can't attack everybody at the same time, assuming animosity. But the rabbis ask 2 questions that are related. The first, why does Torah say Jacob feared and he was greatly distressed and fearful? Now, the premise of the rabbis, I tell everyone who studies with me, you don't have to agree with the premise of the rabbis, but when you're studying traditional text, you have to suspend your disbelief and go with it for the time being, right? So the premise of the rabbis is that nothing in Torah is either inconsistent with anything else, and nothing is redundant. Not even a single letter is redundant, because behind that premise for the rabbis is the notion that Torah is God's speech. And God, while a human author may sometimes repeat themselves, God wouldn't do that. So when we see what seems to be a repetition, Jacob feared and he was really afraid, 2 different words for fear, it must come to teach us something. So, why feared and afraid? This emphasis on fear. Second question from the rabbis, and related, which is, why is Jacob afraid at all? Now, it may seem he's about to see his brother who was last threatening to kill him, and he's got a virtual army with him. It seems like he would have plenty of good reason to be afraid. But sometime back in his famous dream of a ladder connecting heaven and earth, and again, when Jacob wrestles with the angel just the previous night, God has said to Jacob, I will be with you and I will protect you. And so some of the rabbis are critical. They say, Jacob, you should not have been afraid. You had God's promise of protection. If you had kept faith, you would not have feared. And yet, Rabbi Yael Spolansky notes that the phrase do not fear from God to various people, individuals and the Jewish community as a whole, this phrase is repeated constantly throughout the Hebrew Bible, in the Torah and in the prophets and in the writings that follow. So much so that Maimonides insists that it is one of the 365 negative commandments of the Torah. And so Rabbi Spolansky says, the fact that this urging from God to the giants of our tradition, to the biblical visionaries and dreamers, indicates that even they who had assurances from God, nonetheless, like Jacob, still had fears. Because fear is part of the human experience. When the danger is real, we are afraid, despite whatever assurances we may have received. And so Rabbi Bradley Artson reiterates, many religious people claim if only you would truly believe, you would not fear. No worries, all is in God's hands. But Rabbi Artson notes that life doesn't really seem to cooperate so much with this attitude. In fact, it is obvious when we look around that the good and the bad, the believers and the skeptics, the rich and the poor, the weak and the powerful, in the end, we all suffer losses. We all struggle. We are all tried. We are all, if we are lucky, we all grow old if we are lucky enough to do so. We all lose loved ones along the way, and we all die. And so the example of Jacob comes to reassure us, says Rabbi Artson, and say other commentators, that fear is compatible with faith. That if the greatest teachers of our tradition could experience moments of terror and despair, despite having heard directly from God that all will be fine, all the more so those of us who do our best to go through the challenges and losses of this life. Our tradition does not promise that faith will ward off suffering. What it does instead is to give us a light, to give us hope, to help sustain us even in the dark times that inevitably befall each and every one of us. May we have the courage in our struggles to acknowledge our fears and bolstered with hope through our tradition to go forward nonetheless. Can you hear that song? May this be God's will. Concluding portion of our service, Elenu, page 586, at the bottom of the page, we rise as able. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latekadu liotzer breshit shelo asanu kagaye haratzot velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama shelo samchokenu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad Ushamo echad. Please be seated. So we will, in a moment, recall those who have died at this season in years past, those whose yard sites fall in recent days. So if you are online, again, you can type into the chat names of people for whom you wish to be remembered for Kaddish, for all those who are here. Again, I invite you to share the names of people who you are holding in your heart as we prepare to offer the traditional mourner's prayer for Terry McKay, Dave Weiss, Jack, have anybody online?
Yeah, Petra says Susie Pikus.
For these and for all whose lives have been a source of blessing to us, I invite the mourners, those whose custom it is, to rise for Kaddish, page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. V'almad divrah chirutei, v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'yamru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam leomei almaya, v'yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudsha berichu, le'elah min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechmata, ta'amiran b'yalma v'yamru amen. Yehei shalom Rabbah min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. May the one who makes peace on high let peace descend on us, on all Israel, on all the world. May comfort be with all who mourn, and let us all say, Amen. Couple of announcements. First, I want to thank Sandy and Brad for beautiful music this evening, and to Eddie for setting us up, and to Jack for running our sound. It takes a village to do this, and grateful for all who comprise that village. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, our Shabbat service per usual. We'll also have a bar mitzvah for Kieran Varley. Dan, you look like you want to announce something. Okay, so two other things. First, if you have not gotten your Hanukkah bag, we have them here, so don't go home without a bag. And I'll announce for Murray, we have now officially launched our 125 Stories project. Ideas, a story for every year of the congregation. Maybe maybe we need the baker's dozen, because we're not, we're now up to 100 and what, 27, almost 28, yeah. And we still need more stories. So read the stories. Brad's story is the kickoff for the project. It's on the website, and they're going to be out in the email blasts. And if you have not done so, we encourage you to. It's not too late to write your own story and submit it, and we'll add them to get up to the numbers. Gail. Yes, it was basically started in the fall before we turned 125, around the holidays, and we got set back a little by the pandemic. So if you did a story already, we have your story. But if you didn't, please join us and write one. Adon Olam, we're going to conclude with Adon Olam. Oh, yes, Molly. We have an Essential Judaism class at 8:30 to 10 on Saturday mornings. We'll probably, for another month or so, we'll be taking anybody new who wants to join. It runs through, I think, May, and it's team taught, so it's great class, great opportunity to learn. I guess I'll say one other. Let's see, I think it is the 30th of November. We have a special guest, Fran Hopfner. This will also be in the email if it hasn't already been. She is a visiting artist at Searle's Place Some of us knew Cyril Mitchell, who was a member of our community, a wonderfully talented painter. And Cyril left her beautiful house to be a home for visiting artists. So people come in and they come in for a few weeks, and while they're there, they create and they share what they're creating with the community. So the artist coming in, her name is Fran Hafner. She's a Jewish comedian, writer. The first thing on her bio said culture critic, which made me laugh because every Jew is a culture critic. But she's a wonderful writer, and she's got a story, a true life story about a bracelet in her family that her grandmother made in Theresienstadt as a prisoner, and that is now in the Jewish Museum in New York City. And she has a great story to tell about that history through that piece of jewelry. So lots of stuff coming up. Check your email blast. Adon Olam, page 625. Want to help me sing this one? I could use some help. I'm not good at singing and playing the banjo at the same time. It's a Adon Olam Asher Malach V'Terem Kol Yitzir Nivra V'Ein Na'asa V'Chetz HaKol Azayin Elech Shemo Nivra Azayin Elech Shemo Nivra V'Rachamei Tiklot HaKol V'Mano Yipol Torah V'Hu Haya V'Hu Omed Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.